We are off and running. It is good to be with you again today. Many exciting things are happening at LGFG. Who had a chance to watch Dimitri's 4-minute video on all the great things that are happening? Good. Well, there's lots of great things that are happening. I want my own EA. I am now filing for my own executive assistant. So, but that's really cool that so much good stuff is happening. You guys are doing a great job making contacts, doing your appointments, setting up your calendars, and then ultimately selling lots of executives, high-level people around the world. It's very cool, very global. So congratulations. And I look forward to seeing either you guys on a screen somewhere if we're simulcasting. Hello. This summer. Or, wow, somebody had tacos last night. Yeah, mute yourselves, please. If you're making sounds like that, I definitely
want... I was moving my laptop, please. Sorry about that.
Okay, Yoni, fess it up. It was his laptop, which evidently has a gas function in it. Okay, let's begin. And last week we talked, how many of you had a chance to explore your inner self-awareness, internal and external, with friends? Did you do some of that? Did you have conversations? Have you discovered that your circles may not be exactly together? Yeah? Anybody make any kind of discovery? Right? Okay, one response. Good. Well, let me encourage you to not just take some notes and say, well, that was interesting, kind of, and then forget about it, but to continue to explore some of these topics. That's why sometimes I like to have that, you know, a particular theme run through several leadership calls, because you just can't listen to something for me for 15 or 20 minutes and go, oh, okay, I got that. Check, done. Self-awareness, complete. I'm self-actualized now. Thank you. No, it takes work and conversations. So this week, about a month or so ago, I pulled out I just briefly flashed my portfolio sort cards. And you don't know what these are, but I used these for years in my other corporate world at Southwestern. And I bought them because I was interested in doing better performance reviews. That's something you do in corporations from time to time. You have an annual performance review, and you give people feedback on how they were doing. But it was always really awkward, because you would sit across from someone and maybe you have some notes and you say, well, here's what you did well, and here's what you could do better. And I don't know, it just got boring. So with these cards, it was kind of interesting. There are 67 different skill and attributes on these cards. And you can see there's one on the skill of compassion. It's someone who has integrity and trust. Another one is the ability to learn on the fly. That means you pick up stuff fast. The ability to organize. So they determined that there are at least 67 skills that people should have in varying degrees. And then what you do with these cards, you have 3 piles. For example, you have a pile that says strength, then you'd have a pile that said weakness, and then a pile that said reasonably good at. So you could sort it in all kinds of different ways. So as you sat and talked to somebody, you could say, okay, how are you doing in the area of personal disclosure? And so we would talk about that, and we would either figure out that they were skilled in that area and it was a strength, or on the other side it says unskilled, and it would tell you exactly what that looks like in terms of personal disclosure. If you're not good at revealing yourself, if you're opaque to other people, you might find that. And then what I wanted to talk about today was this, and that is any strength that you have that you overuse will become a weakness. That is the call. That's the talk. That's what I want you to know and take away from this. So if you're like, oh, I got to go to a fitting right now. Good. You just got the main idea. That's my thesis. Any strength that you use repeatedly and often and too much, that's the key, becomes a weakness. All right? So what I thought I would do is have you, as we're kind of talking here at the beginning, write down at least 3 of your biggest strengths that you know, that you're self-aware of, or you sat down and somebody said, you know what, you're really, card number 62, you're really creative. And you went, oh yeah, I am creative. So write down a few of your biggest strengths, right? Now hear me well, having strengths is good. And thankfully God has blessed this organization with people who have many different types of strengths. We're not all the same, and that's good, right? If you remember our DISC profile thing that we went through, we're all engineered and wired differently. We have different personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses, but we complement one another. But here's the deal with strengths. Once you discover a strength and it's easy for you and you kind of, it's not difficult and you enjoy it, you tend to use it again and again and again and again. Let me share one with you. I'm pulling out card number 26. This is the humor card. And since I was a little kid, people said, oh, you're funny. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, everybody knows what a sense of humor is, right? Sure. But let's flip the card and find out how I overused that in everything, whether I was at university, whether I was at work at Southwestern in sales management as a leader. I overused this. So let me see, I'll read it to you. It says, people who yep. Go ahead and mute. It's fine. Good. Okay. Any one who uses humor too much may disrupt the group process with untimely or inappropriate humor. Think about someone you know. May use humor to deflect real issues and problems. Guilty. I used to do that. May use humor to criticize others and veil an attack. I was expert at this because you could always just kind of, and some of you are good at it too, you could just ream somebody with a little sarcasm and then they're like, ow, that hurt my feelings. You're like, hey, I was just kidding. No. Overuse. Here's another. Oh, I just said this. May use humor to deliver sarcasm or cynicism. May be perceived as immature or lacking in appropriate seriousness. And your humor can often be misinterpreted. That's what the card says. So I was like, wow. I was really convicted about that because that was me. And a lot of times people couldn't tell whether I was kidding or not. We've talked about that a while back. So that's a strength that I have, which is good. Humor, you can kind of, if you're walking to a sales meeting and it's a little bit uptight or there's an atmosphere of awkwardness, you can kind of reduce with humor, you can reduce that tension quickly. But man, if you go to it all the time, it can be a weakness, right? So has everybody got a few strengths written down? You just tuned in, we're writing down our big strengths. Now your goal, maybe during this call or when we hang up, you can talk about it with some of your team members, is to think, how can this strength, which is really good to me, overused, become a weakness? All right, that'll be your assignment, because all of these things that you've written down are two-edged swords. There's one side of the blade which is really positive, but on the other side there's like a dark blade. Okay, so if you like that metaphor. So our tendency is to default to what we're good at and overdo it. Lopsided strengths equals a diminished capacity on the opposite end. So let me share a few examples just to help get your brain thinking about this in different ways. I'll share a few people I worked with for a number of years. I worked with a great individual. We'll call him Dan, since that's his name. Anyway, but Dan was super positive, hyper positive, great attitude. Some of you know Dan, and he admits to this. But is positivity, first off, is that a good thing? Optimism? Nod your head. Yes, being optimistic is certainly positive, especially when things aren't going well. It's great to have somebody that's positive. But if you think about it, how can positivity used in all situations at all times not be helpful? All right? Consider that eternal optimist that I knew, Dan, who's so upbeat. This guy only saw things as he wanted them to be. And that kind of divorced reality from positivity sometimes, right? Sometimes he would set unrealistic expectations for the team and set the team up for failure because he's like, we can do this. Yeah, woo. And we're like, I don't think we can pull this off by tomorrow. So anyway, that's an example of taking something good, a strength, and then overusing it. Let me give you another example. Used to work with a guy who was very thoughtful, analytical, president of my former company, whose name was Jerry. Okay? And Jerry was a great guy. His strength, besides attention to detail, was a real ability to develop consensus. So one of these cards is consensus building. Okay? Is that a good skill to have if you work in a company? Yes? Okay, good. Thanks for nodding. Well, the team building aspect is great and the consensus is great, but what happens during meetings if you're always building consensus and you're sitting there with, let's say, 20 people? Well, it makes the meetings last forever. And you know what else happens? A lot of times decisions don't get made because you're too busy trying to get everybody to agree, which is almost impossible. So, and I remember walking out of one meeting and one of the directors said he couldn't decide his way out of a paper bag. He was kind of mad. So a lot of times the team wanted decisions rather than just, does everybody feel good about this? Does everyone agree? Can everyone share some more input? Okay, that's good to a point. All right. So what else I've got a whole list of things that I wrote down. Let me share one more person with you. An individual that was really, let's see, how would I describe? I think I've talked about her before. She had a real attitude of service. So she would always step in the gap and say, I can do that, I can help with that. And she was good at it. So her service orientation, which is another one of my cards, is a great strength. But if you're constantly saying yes to everything and no to nothing, that means you individually don't have time for yourself at all. Okay? So if you think about selling, since all of us are in sales, you can think about sales strengths that can be overplayed or overdone, you know? I was talking to Leo yesterday in the Australia office, and one of the things that he said, I wrote it down, he said, I'm really honest. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, and I said, do you mean direct? He goes, yeah, I tell people exactly what I think. I don't like to beat around the bush. You know, I said, okay, that's a great skill. Everyone enjoys directness, especially the executives that you call on. But what's a problem if you overdo directness? And he said, well, I suppose it could be perceived as rude. I said, yes, people might think that's insensitive if you're just always like ultra direct. Okay, so you get the idea. Strengths are great, but overplayed, they become weaknesses. All right. Now, I'll give you a few more here. I've just got all my cards, and I won't go through all 67 at all. But let me give you the strength and then the overuse. And if you have some that match, then we'll talk for just really quick about how you can make some changes. One other strength card that I really like is desire for results. Desire for results. So what a cool thing to have a whole team of people who are like, yes, let's do things, let's get it done, let's make results happen. The overuse of that is that you can steamroll people. You can, without regard to what they want, what they desire, what their needs, you can just plow right through them. So that's an overuse of that. Enthusiasm, I'll reference one of our clothiers whom I like a lot and is doing a great job, especially on social media, and that's Rachel. How many of you know Rachel? Okay, yeah, you can raise it. I'm just giving you a chance to participate, that's all. Well, Rachel's, I remember early on when I had a chance to coach her, she said she was making adjustments when she was in her sales meetings because her personality, one of her strengths, is enthusiasm. So if you ever sit down with Rachel, her enthusiasm is very, it's super engaging. So somebody that's really enthusiastic has a high I on the disc profile. It loves people. Overuse of enthusiasm, you come across overly bubbly. And she said, you know what? I'm not coming across the right way with the right tone with the folks I'm calling on at their level, with their status. So I've got to tone down my enthusiasm. And so that was a huge awareness issue for her. And I think it really helped her sales. Somebody that's really independent, another card, independence. What a great thing if you're a salesperson, you know, super independent. But overused, you become a poor team player. You're just about yourself. Being patient is another card. Patience is a great skill to have. Problem with patience is you can be complacent. You can get too patient. You're like, yeah, whatever, you know, Akuna Matata, whatever happens, happens. I'm fine. Life's good. And then you become ineffective. Okay. So the Oracle at Delphi, you're like, what? How did you get Greek history and mythology into this? The Oracle at Delphi said this: everything in moderation. That was the takeaway quote, along with other things she shared with various mortals that came to her. Everything in moderation. So the key is to use our strengths at a healthy, balanced level and not to overuse them. And while it's easy to identify, here's the deal. It's so easy to identify. If you look around to people in your office or on your team, you can go, man, she sure is overused in her strength, or wow, she's unskilled in that area. But we fail at recognizing our own shortcomings, right? Because we think, I've got it together. Okay. Another quote here I'll throw in just for fun. Benjamin Franklin said, wasted strengths are like sundials in the shade. So I wanted to go through a few behaviors, and then I pulled out a couple cards that I thought were good for Dimitri. Everybody know Dimitri? Okay. Because I thought these would apply to him, and I just pulled them out real quick. He has more than 2, but I'm going to share those with you in just a second. So if you're about directness, and that's a strength of yours, what you might need to do to sort of mollify your overuse of that is you need to ask more questions or soften the tone of your words. Have you noticed how important tone is on the telephone, you know, to get it just right? If you are a big picture thinker, you're like, I'm just a visionary. And I'm like, yes, we need those. But guess what? There are lots of people around you that may not be big picture people. They want the details. They want to know, what do I do step by step? Fill me in. Don't just paint this huge picture and go, let's go get them, you know? So what you may need to do is provide details to other people. Here's another strength that I really like. It was harmony. In other words, you're good at creating harmony in an office setting, or harmony on a team. Is the ability to get along with others useful in a corporate setting? Yes, or else we all hate each other. Well, guess what? Too much harmony might lead to non-productivity. Everybody's getting along, but we're not doing anything, right? So to kind of quell that strength a little bit, if you need to, you may need to view conflict as an opportunity, not a threat. Some of us hate conflict. Like, oh, don't make me, no conflict. I hate conflict. Well, guess what? That was kind of like me. I was more concerned early on as a leader to have people like me than to be effective. So once I learned to be more firm with people, wow, they really, I think, enjoyed working with me. And I was a lot better coach to them too when I was firm but fair, instead of just nice and fun. Okay? What else do I have here? I got more. Let's see. What about this? Somebody has the desire for the right answer. Okay? I want to get it right. I want to know things. I want to make sure I'm right. Well, that's good, but you may need to develop a greater tolerance for ambiguity and the fact that humans are imperfect. Okay? Now, while you may be perfect, other humans are not. So you need to be more more patient about that. Okay, so those are just a few. Let me pull out ones. Where did I put them? That I thought would pertain to, here we go. Here's a couple. Dimitri, you can agree or not. So here are two that jumped out at me that I think describe Dimitri as strengths. One is command skills. Command skills. I'll read it to you. Relishes leading, takes unpopular stands if necessary, encourages direct and tough debate, but isn't afraid to end it and move on. Does that sound somewhat accurate? Good. Let's see. Is looked to for direction in a crisis, faces adversity head on, and is energized by tough challenges. I'd say, yeah, that's to be, and he's even nodding in agreement. Now, let me read the other side. If he goes to this too often and uses those command skills too much, it might look like this. May not be a team player, may not be tolerant of other people's ways of doing things. May choose to strongly lead when other more team-based tactics would do as well or better. May not develop other leaders and may become controversial and be rejected by others. Okay, so command skills, real important for the head of the company, but you got to have it in moderation. Yeah, here's another one. Dimitri, you can see if you like this one too. Maybe not. It could be my last call. This one, see, there's humor. Sorry. Intellectual horsepower. I like that. That sounds good. Intellectual horsepower is bright and intelligent, deals with concepts and complexity comfortably, described as intellectually sharp, capable, and agile. Would you say that describes him? He's like, yeah. He's like, overused. There's always a dark side, isn't there? May use intelligence to dominate and intimidate others. May not be able to relate to those less intelligent. Okay. May accept only his own solutions and may be impatient with due process to let the process work itself out. So, you know, these are just some examples. But the point of this call is I want you to start thinking about the strengths that you're aware of internally and then think, okay, how and when have I overdone these? When do I overuse these? When can this not be helpful to me? Because, you know, one of your strengths, as I look around the group, and I know some of you pretty well, is that you're like super, and this isn't on one of the cards, I need to find the closest one to it, but you're easygoing, okay? In other words, that's a card called composure. You're very composed. Is that a positive and good thing? Yes. But if you're super easygoing, you're unflappable, nothing gets to you, guess what? You're on an even keel, but you never really ramp it up and take it to the next level. You can easily be satisfied with where you are, all right? So that's sort of a downside to being like super easygoing and relaxed. You're willing to settle, which is not what we want to do as we're growing the company. Yeah? So food for thought. Is everybody's brain full of food for thought? So here's your assignment. Look at your strengths. And since we're just concentrating on those this week, look at your strengths and think, how and when have I overdone these? And it might be interesting to think, how did I develop this strength? You know, who told me that I was good at this area, or how did I discover it? That's kind of a good thing to know. But as Benjamin Franklin said, we want to use our strengths wisely. He said, wasted strengths are like sundials in the shade. I just wanted to make sure you got that. And Alexander Dumas said this: any virtue carried to an extreme can become a crime. Which is true. So it is with our strengths. Take the time to assess them and make sure that they're helping and not hindering your success. All right, so let's open up the phone lines. Anybody have a look, as we went through this, did you have a little discovery or an aha or a wow, what about this type reaction? Let's see if I see any mics unmuted here. Most of you are like, nope, I'm just perfectly balanced. Strengths.
Haley,
Yes. Go, who's this?
it's Hannah.
Oh, hi. Hi, Hannah.
So something that came to mind was I went to this event for floating, and my mindset at first was, okay, so you're really good, so that's one of your best strengths. Why don't you float every single person in the room? But then what I started to realize, 8 hours into it, was that it was starting to backfire because people were realizing, oh, she's just walking up to everyone. So then at one point I had to make a decision and say, okay, like, wouldn't you rather be happy with 80 floats rather than, 150, but then, call 80 people and actually get through to them rather than get so many no's from, saying, oh,
Yeah.
like, yeah. So that's something that I realized, like, maybe sometimes too much of something is a little overkill, and
Good.
like it's quality versus quantity.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good situational example of the fact that you make great first impressions and you're super approachable and you're not afraid of approaching people, but you have to be kind of discriminating and discreet about going, you know what, I'm good at this, so I'm just going to approach everybody in the meeting. Yeah, good. Thank you for that. Anybody else have a thought about something you do well? It's your chance to brag about, kind of thump your chest a little, or not. Okay. All right. Well, I'll wrap this one up. Go think about those things, talk about them, drop me a note if I can be helpful, or if you're like, I've got this strength and I don't know how in the world I can overuse it, or it just sounds so right. I'll send me an email and I'll send you the answer, which is on the back of one of these 67 cards. I also have interesting cards that are part of this set called Career Stallers and Stoppers, which we may cover lightly next time because I violated many of those on my slow upward movement in the corporate world previously. So thank you so much. You guys are winning. Keep up the great work. Keep leading. And we will talk again next week. Lee McCroskey signing off. Thanks for playing.